Hey guys, Captain Rick Murphy here. I want to welcome you to the Captain Rick Murphy YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the subscribe button down there in the bottom corner of your screen, and don't forget to tell all your buddies to come check us out. You know guys, one of the things that I love catching offshore is Wahoo. The reason why they are screaming drag all the time. When they hit the bait, it goes from hours of boredom to this crazy amount of excitement for 8 to 10 minutes. And you never forget that first screaming run of a Wahoo. So whether you've caught a million of them or you've never caught one, I think I want to give you a couple tricks and techniques that you can use when fishing, whether it's the Bahamas, off of the Carolinas, any place in Florida or the Gulf. High-speed trolling or trolling for Wahoos has been certainly something that's been very effective, but there is times when you can go and put a blue runner and just bump troll in and around structure. Wahoos love to be around structure because of all the bait that gathers there, whether it's an artificial reef, a ship, maybe it's some type of ledge, whatever it may be. That's what usually attracts them. Now keep in mind that if you are going to bait fish, they eat lots of things. They eat scads, which is a speedo. They love blue runners. They like thread fins. They love goggle eyes. You can hook those fish in the shoulder with your hook, or maybe you might want to bridle them if you're into that. It just doesn't really matter. Don't forget, you got to have wire in anything you do, and when it comes to fishing for a Wahoo, you can use the piano wire or you can use some braided cable. So let's talk a little bit about if you don't have bait, what can you do to increase your chances? Well, remember this, they love to eat small bonitas. So you can troll lures or go to the tackle store and buy some Savage Max sticks. This particular one looks a lot like a little bonita. They love eating bonitas. If you're out and you see bonitas hitting on the surface, you could certainly sabiki them up. They also like lots of dark colors, purples, blacks, purple and reds. They love that. This is the Speed Runner by Savage. It's 170 grams. It weighs a lot. You can hook it in with a piece of wire here and understand what I love about this. Look at the size of the hooks that Savage has put on them. That's not going to straighten out. It'll take any Wahoo bite you get. Don't forget to pre-test your drags. If you're fishing 80 pound, which is what I would recommend, 80 pound braid, you want to put about 16 pounds of drag on there because a Wahoo is going to eat something going away. He likes to eat things going this way. And that's why those bites are so exciting, because you're trolling this way and he eats it going that way, and you go from 0 to 40 in a matter of seconds. Keep that in mind. Just keep trolling, cover ground. That's going to increase your chances whenever you're Wahoo fishing. You can also use deep divers like this Savage deep diver. This is a 30. What that means is a 30 is not just the size, but that's the depth that it can be trolled in at 6 to 8 knots. You can troll this Speed Runner at 10 to 12 knots and it's going to cover the same depth. But what I like is that maybe you want to stagger them. You put one long and one short in your spread as you're trolling it around, and the fish will tell you what they're really interested in. So make sure you buy an assortment of different colors. You'll also have a lot of great bycatch when trolling artificial lures. But you know, high-speed trolling, guys, it has become the the go-to way to catch a Wahoo. And it doesn't matter whether you're high-speed trolling off of Texas or off in the Gulf of Mexico. You know, you may be up there in the Panhandle off of Destin. It's a very effective way to catch big Wahoos. Jacksonville, St. Augustine, they got to run a long ways, but once they get out there to the blue water, this is how they do it and cover ground. So I drew a little diagram. We'll start off here. Here's my front runner 36 with my triple 350 Yamahas. Now here's our setup. We're going to use 4 rods, but we're going to stagger those rods. And how we know before we leave the dock, what we're going to do on our 80 wide reels or 70s, whichever you have, we're going to put a floss mark. And we're going to put a floss mark on every one of these 4 rods. Every 100 yards, we're going to put a floss mark. And then that way we know that if we go 4 floss marks out of the tip of the rod as it's coming off of the reel, that's 400 yards, because each floss mark is 100 yards between the marks. So remember that. So if we start off before we leave the dock and we take some time, and all 4 of these rod combos, we put those floss marks on there, it won't matter whether you pick up the rod that was here one time and then the next time it becomes the right long. All right, now that we've established that, we also want to talk about how we're going to stagger these 4 rods. How do we fish 4 rods at 15 knots and zigging and zagging down the reef line without getting them tangled? Here's the secret, fellas. The first rod we're going to put it 400 yards out. We're going to only put a 24-ounce weight. That weight looks like this. And what this does is this particular part goes to our weighted lure like this one. We'll get into that in a second. And then this particular part goes to a shock cord, which we'll get into that in 1 second. But let's get back to the rigs. 24 ounce at 400 yards. And then on the same side, we're only going to be at 200 yards, but we're going to use a 48-ounce lead. So that lead is not only going to be, this lure is not only going to be short of this, but because of the weight of the lead, it's going to be a lot lower. So as we go and zigzag, they're going to be like this. This one's going to be under, going under this, and this is going to be above because the weight itself is a lot less. On the opposite side, we're going to go a 64 ounce, the closest one to the boat, but it's going to be at 100 yards. So it's going to be really close and deep right there by the transom. And then at the 300 yard mark, as you can tell, we got 400, 300, 200, 100. We're going to have a 36 ounce weight. Now, when it comes to all of this terminal tackle, let's take a second. So here's our rod and reel. We got 80-pound braid on our rod and reel. We're going to have a swivel tied on our braid. That braid is going to go to the weight. So this would be in line here, just like so. The swivel is going to hook to this part, and then this part is going to go to a 100-yard shock leader of monofilament 200-pound test. Okay? So keep that in mind. So we're going to have braid to a swivel. Now we got our weight. Then we have this shock cord. That shock cord, guys, is very important because, one, we want to have that shock when that fish first hits. But then number 2, we're going to hand line that fish in because we can't reel all this terminal tackle in through the rod guides. So it's really important that you got to have somebody assisting when you go to land this fish. And then at the end of the shock cord, it's going to have a swivel, and then that's going to hook up to our lure just like this. The one thing that I love about this is we talked a second about lures and colors. Look at how Ridge has created these double hooks with some rubber skirts. And inside the rubber skirt, he's got an islander which is weighted with this braided shock line. And then there's a big heavy weight in here, as you can see, and then that helps keep this also from skipping. It keeps it down deep. And then big heavy hooks with swivels here. That way when that Wahoo hits it, it's going to create a big hole in his mouth, and this is a real key part of what happens. He hits it going away, you're going one way, we're going to drill a big hole in his mouth. Guys, it's very important to keep the boat moving forward. Otherwise, the weight of this lure will fall out of that Wahoo's mouth when he shakes his head, because we create such a monster hole on the bite itself because they like to eat things head first. He's going to eat it going in the opposite direction that you are. Purple and black, dark blues, purple and red, black and red, black and orange. All these colors work. What you should do when you first start fishing, put a variety of different colors out and see which one's getting hit. Halloween, black and orange is a very popular color. And if you have one color over another that's getting bit, Then you maybe want to add 2 or 3 or something very similar so that you can catch multiples at a time. Remember this, guys, it's so important that once you grab that shock leader, the weight comes up, you're going to take the weight, drop it in a rod holder or lay it in the floor of the boat so that it's not swinging and possibly end up hitting somebody. Then have your gloves on, you're pulling that 200-pound monofilament shock cord. Now you got to have somebody ready to gaff the fish. At this point, if you're the angler, you can have set that rod down in a rod holder so that it's facing outward in case something happens, it doesn't get yanked out of the boat. And more importantly, put it in gear so that it doesn't fall over, doesn't backlash the reel, you don't lose the fish. If the guy has to let go or he slips or whatever, a million things can happen. But if the fish gets away from him temporarily, we want to make sure that the rod is in a rod holder and in gear so that we can go back to fighting him to get him boat side so we can gaff him. Once you get the fish up close, make sure that you gaff the fish over the top of the back, but don't go over the leader. Come in behind the leader so that if the fish turns away from you, it doesn't end up breaking your line if the gaff tears out of them. I'm going to tell you guys, Wahoo, my favorite way to have them is cut that little fillet off of each side of the, which makes a tenderloin. Make a nice thin cut, lay it out on a plate, put a little salt and pepper on it, and then when you're in olive oil, and then when you're ready to eat it, squeeze some lemon on it, put it in the refrigerator for about 20 minutes. The lemon will help start to cook that fish. It'll make you want to write a bad check. It's so good. So guys, if you have any questions about Wahoo fishing or any offshore stuff, man, send me an email. Maybe the next YouTube video we do is something that you might have asked us. We want to really make sure in 2024 and 2025 we do as much as we can to make you guys a better angler. Thanks for going to the Captain Rick Murphy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and tell all your buddies.